All right, and welcome back to the show, the David Lawler podcast. Just me, sitting in Studio 4 and shooting my mouth off. And I don't have any guests or co-hosts. It's just me talking about things that interest me. Conversating with my friend David Anderson, and he says, "You have a lot to say," in a discernible Southern accent, I guess. He's from Washington, where I think everybody talks like this or something like that. I'm assuming that's how they all sound in Washington. I was born in Cincinnati, so my voice should actually kind of sound like this. We say Cincinnati. I'm from Cincinnati. But then I go to Philadelphia, where people start to talk very quickly, and they have kind of an Eastern Seaboard accent, so they're kind of like this, talking like this all the time. Yeah, I'm from Philadelphia. Hey, what are you up to? And then you come up to New York, where I am right now, and it's like, fuck you, all right? This is how I talk, all right? Fuck you. But, so you take all those together, and then my mother's from the South. She was born in Nashville. So you get a little bit of that good old boy thing. And Cincinnati is below the Mason-Dixon line, or as we like to call it, the Manson-Nixon line. I grew up poor. Never really knew wealth, never knew any accumulation of things. Anything we ever had was always taken from us in crazy ways. And we were homeless, of course. That's what happens when you come to New York. When you come to New York, you eventually become homeless because for some reason they want you out in the street. They don't want you living in a nice apartment or putting things together or becoming successful because it just makes them mad. And then they like to ignore, especially around that time. I think that was 1988. It was like our first year living there. We couldn't even hold together an apartment. It was fairly expensive for the time. And I remember Ed Koch going on TV and saying, "There are no squatters." You know, because they're all bums. They're all homeless people or whatever. So the subject of this episode would have to be real wealth versus theoretical wealth. And I make those distinctions because this is how I see people. There are people that are truly wealthy, and then there are people who pretend to be. So there are more than a few points to cover here, but hopefully we won't go past the allotted 30-minute running time. I think I want to start off with, I guess, your standard poor people. And poor people, see, the definitions are so skewed, especially in a place like New York. You have people living on the government dole, but they don't like to say that because it's basically taking money from taxes that are paid from people who have jobs and also from the wealthy. I'm sure the wealthy do pay taxes, but the wealthy have a lot of resources under their belts, like really good accountants who can figure out how to move money away from you so that it doesn't look like it's your money. And you live a very lavish lifestyle. You pretty much don't have to worry about anything, and somebody else is paying your bills for you. You're paying them to pay their bill, like I mentioned in a previous episode I was thinking about. With the poor, generally, it seems like they exist, and they're kept in a box to make other groups feel better about themselves. Because if we don't have people to pretend to care about, then we're going to look like a bunch of self-absorbed assholes. Unless, of course, you have, remarkably astute people such as myself out there to call bullshit and show you. Of course, I'm just guessing on that one. But it always seems to me that the poor people are living much better than the working people. You have your poor, you have your shit dirt poor, you got your working poor, you got your working middle class, you got your, I guess, upper middle class that still works. They still have to work. Don't kid yourself. And then you have the super duper, super villain Zuckerberg Gates wealthy types. And I was listening to a podcast today, and they were saying that the money, where's the money come from and where does it go? These days, it seems to be revolving completely around tech. So it's like if you get yourself into a nice, cushy tech position, you consider yourself a tech developer or tech innovator, something to do with computers and technology, social media, of course. you're making like ludicrous, like obscene amounts of money, like money you'll never need, really. Despite what, we talk about the bad economy and everything. It's a bad economy if you're poor. It's a great economy if you're making an enormous sum of money. And it's an even better economy if you're making an enormous sum of money and not lifting a finger to do it. Like investing in the stock market or something, which is, kind of like the legitimate businessman's idea of gambling. It's like the rest of us, we go to Vegas, we blow our life savings, we buy lottery tickets. Excuse me. Working on something right now. I have no idea. There's something in my throat. So my voice is probably getting all scratched up. Maybe from doing this damn thing. So you go to like the idea of lottery winners or people like that, people who play the lottery. And a lot of times, of course, this is like the wealthy's idea of trying to give that poor person a shot at millions, But I think it's a rarely advertised fact that lottery winners tend to blow all their money. They just go nuts because you don't know what to do with yourself and you don't know anything about wisely investing something, maybe putting some of it towards your future, breaking it up. You put a little pie chart. What do I need right now? How do I get on my feet right now? And then what am I going to need for the rest of my life? But it's about, buying up properties or doing something like that. I don't know what I would do. I mean, I honestly really don't know. I think about Regan's education, obviously. I think about being magnanimous and giving money to relatives if I could or something. But you wind up losing it all. And it comes from like bad decision making, bad thought processes, a bad ability to assess the market, as it were, and also the people around you. They get very strange. They treat you like the cash machine that you actually are. You end up giving up a lot of money, and it becomes worthless to you. I think the more you have, the more worthless the money is to you, especially if you inherit it too. That's another consideration. A lot of young people, let's say maybe between 30 and 50 years old, they're entering a job situation where they're not going to be making the kind of money their parents made and have a high quality of life. I remember my mother, she made $30,000 a year in 1986, and she was able to get her first credit card. I think it was an American Express card, and we lived a very high quality of life at the time, but also prices were very low, it seemed. I mean, we seemed to have a better life back then. And this was during the Reagan administration. I've said this before on other podcasts, but we seemed to live very well when Reagan was president, even though my mother absolutely hated Ronald Reagan. Hated him. Didn't really know that much. Didn't really know that he was a Democrat when he first started out, and he adopted liberal socialist policies like, fighting for unions and things like that. Some kind of equity across the board for every citizen in this country at that time. Yet she loathed him. She campaigned for Walter Mondale and Geraldine Ferraro in 1984 in Tennessee. We were living in Tennessee for a year, near to her family for some reason. We had, again, a very nice house, very low payments to be made and things like that. And somebody threw a brick through our window because she had a Mondale Ferraro for president 1984 sign in our window. Not big Democrat people down there. I think the Democratic Party office in town was like one guy and a phone, and that was about it. And they were constantly under harassment from local Republicans. It'll just show you that both sides are just going to do the same things to see their own people getting elected or whatever, or to intimidate people that oppose their ideas or their perceived ideas, whatever it is. It's whatever you think that person is doing is why you hate them. You don't really know them. And that's the whole thing about the Trump-Clinton thing from last year. You didn't really know these people. You just make assumptions. So we're getting back to people who inherit. Now, these people are not going to live that quality of life. Moving forward as we go into the Clinton years, that's when we had less money. We had less money in the bank, less money in our pockets as the Clinton administration, 8 years of it. my mother, for some reason, got a huge tax bill, and they garnished her wages. Or actually, they don't really call it garnishing when it comes to the IRS. They call it levy. They call it a levy. So they took an enormous percentage of her paycheck out. And we were like dirt poor for a long time, living in New York in the 90s. And then, I don't know, it got better for her. I don't know. She wound up making more money later on, but that was fine for her. But she was never really that great with money to begin with. So, you know, a good economy, you can be really piss poor, bad responsibility, uneducated in finance and still do well. But in a poor economy, you will be punished every single time, especially with student loans and everything that we've had to deal with. But so the people that are living very well right now, and they're between the ages of 30 and 50, are tending to get a lot of help from their parents, from relatives, from other sources, other streams, and it's I remember having a conversation. It was kind of an interesting conversation with someone, a Facebook friend, who was talking about how she wanted to leave a piece of property, and she's not a wealthy woman. She wanted to leave a piece of property to her son because it was something to hold on to, and it was also their family. It was a piece of property within the family, and apparently, you know, they'll get you on this with the estate tax. You know, and when I think of estate tax, I think of Park Place, I think of Boardwalk, I think of Monopoly pieces and hotels and stuff like that. That's what I think about when I think I'm going to leave Regan a mansion. Then that sounds like where the estate tax should come from, or the death tax as they call it. You know. But this is just a modest piece of property, and she just wanted to leave it. And I'm of a mind that I think if you have a sizable amount of cash and you die, that cash should be dispersed to your local community. It should go into the place that you lived, and it should go into, I guess, you know, the problem is corruption. This is a very big problem, especially like when we lived in Brewster. Say I was living in Brewster, I was hopefully, you know, 100 years old, and when I kicked and I had like millions of dollars or something, I want that money to be allocated back into the town. But the problem is Brewster was so horribly corrupt. These people would figure out, these politicians would figure out how to take that money and you know, basically suck off it for the rest of their lives. So it's hard because you can't trust. You can't really trust. You have to have everything. I know that. Back it up with a nice last will and testament that says it's to go to this, it's to go to that. There will be a pool. I will put in a park and a playground. I want the children to have a good time. I want to fix up the roads. I want to put proper sidewalks in, because Brewster was so corrupt they wouldn't even put in proper sidewalks. The sidewalks were smashed to ribbons, and so somebody got the bright idea to pour black asphalt along to fill it in, because I guess black asphalt is cheaper than concrete pavements. So why not? You know, they had like a bridge that was falling apart that was going over the Metro North. And you would think Metro North would have to pick up the dime on that one because, you know, you don't want that thing crumbling on one of your Metro North train cars and causing all kinds of horrible mess. But people don't care. They just don't care. And there was no money coming into the town. I would have built up Main Street. You know, things like that would have mattered, because I'm not going to assume that my child is going to grow up to be a ne'er-do-well and do nothing with their life, and then to have to give that child money. I don't want to do that. I never want to have to do that. What I want is for my child to learn self-reliance and become her own person and not rely on a parent's money. I want them to be strong, because then they'll have a greater appreciation of money, how it's made, where it comes from, and why it belongs in their pocket, not that they're entitled to it. Entitlement, huh? That's what it should be about. I mean, it's really kind of the argument is entitlement. It's people feel entitled to certain things, and especially as I've seen the world. And I've looked at the many, many people in the world, and I've lived in many different places, and I've seen so many different things. We're not entitled to anything, you know. I think maybe on a biological level, we're entitled to the air in our lungs, and that's about it. You don't have pretty much any other kinds of entitlements or rights, as people like to say. People like to throw, we have a right to free healthcare. No, we don't. We have a right to make up our own minds about the kind of healthcare options we have, but we don't have a right to healthcare. We don't have a right. We're not entitled to healthcare. And as we see over the last few months, over the last few years, over the last few decades, politicians are fighting us for our rights. They're fighting us because they don't want us to have them. They want to have total control. The government exists to make itself bigger and bigger and bigger. Politicians exist to keep themselves elected. It's like that. No one's out there to take care of you, not even the people who say they want to take care of you. So I believe that, people who inherit should do something to better the quality of life around them, especially as they're knocking on heaven's door, if you will. And I think children will grow up stronger and wiser for it, to know that they're not going to be helped out in case they do something terrible, in case they, I don't know, cause pain to others or do things. They should not be entitled to that. They should be entitled as a child. A child, I think, deserves a good education and the ability to take care of themselves. But we're going in the opposite direction, aren't we? We're going into this whole thing where we're infantilizing people in their adolescence. We're infantilizing young adults. We're turning them into children. I read some statistics. It says there are a lot fewer drivers. Kids are buying fewer cars. Kids don't know how to write checks. We don't have home ec classes anymore because I guess they're considered sexist now for some reason. But I learned how to do a lot of things in my home ec class in school. I also learned a lot about government by having government classes and civics classes in junior high and high school. So I learned a lot about the branches of government. I don't think the kids, if you will, are really getting that. I don't think they're understanding it. So then let's move past the people who I don't really consider wealthy, because if you've inherited, it's not really your money. It's not your money. It was somebody else's. Somebody who worked very hard for that money. It wasn't you. You're very fortunate. A lot of times, the relatives will cut you off to figure out a way for you to not get. I remember, an episode of Extreme Cinema went up about Anna Nicole Smith, and basically, I guess her very old, dying, half-dust husband left her a substantial portion of the family estate, and then his family fought her on it. She went bankrupt, and she didn't get any. I don't know what happened eventually, but again, she's no longer with us, so we'll never really know. I can't fault them. They saw her as a gold digger. Why not? But they were also turned into like these monsters from the pit of hell when money enters into the fray. And they tore her to pieces like a bunch of great white sharks. So that is another part of the theoretical wealth platform, is that particular component to it. And another one is the alleged wealthy people. These are the people, maybe I could put them into the middle to upper class. They make good money, they work, and they tend to buy houses they can't afford. This happens a lot in New York. Some people I know, just people I only vaguely know. I don't really know them, but I understand they bought a $700,000 house up near the Hudson River, I don't know what county that is. Maybe Montgomery County or something like that. I'm not really sure. Let's say like near, I don't know, Croton or something. Croton on Hudson bought a $700,000 house, but they both had to work. And when you're buying a $700,000 house, but both of you have to work, even after having like a child or something and have to go right back to the job, that means you're making payments on this thing. And it's not a wealthy life, because a wealthy life suggests that you don't have to worry too much about the money. you get a little help. You might actually get a little help from your relatives. That's another thing. A lot of people, they wind up buying a very nice house because somebody in their family chipped in a little bit, helped them up, set them up for their first bank loan or whatever. But a bank loan for $700,000, oh my God. I don't know what I would do in that case. That's a lot of money. It's terrifying, the idea that you got to keep making those payments. And we're talking on that kind of a house, on a 15, even a 30-year mortgage, plus interest, you're looking at, $5,000 a month for the house. And then on top of that, you've got everything else, all the ridiculous expenses of New York State. And then, there's no way to get even. There's no way to break even on that. You're going to have, where you have high property values, you're going to have high salaries. Where you have low property values, you're going to have low salaries. So there's no escape method. There's no little secret. There might be provincial areas where the taxes are a little lower. That's fine. But it all evens out in the end. Everything is taken into account, whether it's weather conditions, the ability of transport. You'll find that most houses that are expensive are on the train lines, because if you're within walking distance of a train station and you don't need a car, you still got to pay for that expensive train ride every day. And I remember living upstate, it was like $400. We were spending over $400 because we both worked in the city. And we didn't have a car. We didn't really need a car because we were about a half a mile from the train station, half a mile from just about like the center of town and everything. So, the hardest part of living up there was the isolation. Too much space tends to freak me out a little bit. And, the weirdos on the road who look like they're on medication and they're staring at you and they're psycho. And people are psycho up in places like that. The kind of crime we have in the city here in New York is a different kind of crime. I'm likely to be shot through the neck and the face for my Nikes. I can understand that. But sometimes you have crazy ass cult killers up there, wheat germ killers or something like that. So you're robbing Peter to pay Paul in that regard. If the property's cheap, you're not making much money, so it's still a struggle for you. The only thing that does help out, ironically, is the inheritance, So I wanted to get into kind of like that dicey territory of these middle to upper middle class people who like to pretend they're wealthy. It's all about luxury and comfort and, I don't know what, expensive items, things that cost thousands of dollars that's being spent because, I don't know, it seems like these people want other people to know, oh, you don't have to worry about me. We're wealthy. We make good money or something like that. I don't know why, but my sister-in-law comes to mind again, talking about because she only had a job for 2 or 3 years. Her husband was making minimum wage, if that, and they somehow afford a house, and I didn't buy it. And she was like, she got all, uppity with me. I hate to use that word, but she got all uppity with me, saying, because I accused her of white privilege. I was just joking, by the way, when I said that. I said this story to Andrew before one time. We were talking about it on Blissville, and I was making a joke. I was just like, yeah, but it's white privilege. It's called white privilege. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about, Dave. I work very hard for the things I got. I work for this. No, not really. She kind of only had a job for a couple of years. She was working under the table. But that's fine. I mean, if you don't want to admit that you got help, that's fine. But you kind of make people crazy when they try, especially people like me. I'm Scottish, so I tend to be very curious about why people do the things they do. Motive is going to be a subject of this show at some point. I have it in my notes. Motive. Why do people do the things they do? Why do people want to create errors? Why do they want people to think that they're living a way that they're probably actually not? If you live, let's say you live in a really big house, like 15 rooms or something, 3 bathrooms, 5 bedrooms, big dining room, big open space, beautiful staircase, and all that stuff, enormous lawn and everything, and you're going to work every day, it's because you don't have the money to pay for that house. You're working your ass off to pay for that house, and you're going to wind up having a heart attack at the age of 45 or something like that, like I'm about to. So it's like they want people to believe that they have a lifestyle. Maybe it comes down to envy or something. Maybe they want people to feel envious. I'll never know. So you have the theoretical wealth, and those are all the people that I've mentioned. Real wealth is the completely different. It's a 180. It's people who are earning, I don't know, like, I talked about Kendall Jenner getting $22 million a year to model. That might be considered wealth if that's a real figure. My jury is still out on whether or not that's a real figure. But it's quite possible, I guess. The celebrities, highly paid celebrities. I'm sure I have a top 10 list of wealthiest entertainers, I think, that I will unravel at some point. So and then you have like the entrepreneurs, the philanthropists. Mark Cuban. Who's that guy? The Tesla dude. Elon Musk. That's his name. The Tesla dude. These are people who are used to spending enormous sums of money and then blowing it. Basically blowing the money on things. Elon Musk has a lot of crazy ideas. He wants to set up a series of underground like expressways with, I guess, what he wants to do is he wants to build these tunnels underground. He wants to have this kind of a slip that you put your car into, and then that slip is like wound up like a rubber band or something like that, and goes over hundreds of miles per hour to places or something. This would be I guess it would replace some kind of like an underground subway system or a rail system or a light rail system. I don't know that that'll work, and it sounds insanely dangerous, especially when we're dealing with California and seismic stress and earthquakes and all that. But, if you can make it work, maybe you can put in some shock absorbers or something, some kind of hydraulic spring sections, so that we don't have the horrible things I'm imagining in my head that could possibly go wrong with this plan. And then you have, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Bill and Melinda Gates being, I think he owns his own island or something, right? These are extremely wealthy people who tend to invest their money in really bad situations. Things they should not be putting money into. And then you have Richard Branson, who came up with the Virgin rocket, whatever that is. It's a rocket funded by Virgin. It goes up into space and then explodes. I don't know what's going to happen when they launch that thing, but you're going outside government means to construct rockets. I don't know if I trust a rocket built by some guy named Earl with a wrench. Yeah, that's go up there about 500 miles an hour. He's missing even more teeth than I am. So these are the kind of guys who are really seriously wealthy, like actual wealth. Like they don't have to worry about anything. If you have to worry about the money, you're not wealthy. What else is there to say? Except I'm not wealthy. I grew up poor and I'm probably going to die poor. How about that? For the Dave Lawler podcast, I'm David Lawler, and this episode's coming at Christmas. So Merry Christmas, everybody, and I hope you all get what you want for Christmas. I hope you all get staggering, embarrassing, ridiculous wealth. Good night and God bless.